In 2019, WeWork was worth $47 billion. 4 years later, it filed for bankruptcy. Billions in investor money had vanished, thousands of employees were left wondering what happened, and one of the world's most celebrated startups had become a symbol of everything that could go wrong in the age of easy money. At the center of the story was Adam Neumann, charismatic, eccentric, relentlessly ambitious, and exceptionally good at making people believe they were witnessing the future. Neumann wasn't simply selling office space. He was selling a philosophy, that work could become a community, that buildings could become social networks, and that a real estate company could somehow become the next great technology platform. The basic business model was surprisingly simple. WeWork would lease large office buildings, renovate them into stylish co-working spaces, and rent desks and private offices to freelancers, startups, and corporations. The genius was in the presentation. Coffee, networking, events, beautiful interiors, community. It didn't feel like renting an office. It felt like joining a movement. Founded in 2010, WeWork expanded at extraordinary speed. Its locations spread across major cities around the world, while investors poured billions into the company. By 2017, the company was valued around $20 billion. Then came SoftBank. Masayoshi Son, the billionaire founder of SoftBank, became one of Neumann's biggest believers, and eventually one of the most important characters in the entire story. In January 2019, SoftBank led another major investment round. The result? WeWork was valued at an astonishing $47 billion. At that moment, the company was worth more than many established corporations that had spent decades building factories, products, and profitable businesses. But there was a problem. WeWork wasn't making money. In 2018, WeWork generated about $1.8 billion in revenue. It also lost roughly $1.6 billion. And in the first 6 months of 2019, it generated about $1.5 billion in revenue while losing another $690 million. Yet investors were still being told that WeWork was something fundamentally different, something closer to technology than real estate. And this is where WeWork's biggest mistake becomes visible. It had the financial structure of a real estate company, but the growth expectations of a technology startup. WeWork signed long-term leases on expensive buildings. Then it renovated those buildings, filled them with furniture and amenities, and rented the space out to customers, often on much shorter contracts. That created a dangerous mismatch. The company's costs were long-term. Its customers could leave much sooner. But the pressure wasn't simply to build a profitable company. The pressure was to grow. More buildings, more countries, more employees, more members, more valuation. And Neumann's leadership style blurred the line between aggressive entrepreneurship and unchecked corporate power. The company's 2019 IPO filing exposed a series of conflicts and controversial transactions involving the founder, including loans and property relationships connected to Neumann. One image captured the excess perfectly. A private Gulfstream jet costing around $60 million became part of the controversy surrounding WeWork spending. There were also questions about personal loans, related party transactions, and the company's governance structure. The problem wasn't just that money was being spent. It was that the people responsible for controlling the spending had failed to create enough distance between the company and its founder. And then WeWork made its biggest mistake of all. It decided to show the public exactly what was happening behind the curtain. In August 2019, WeWork filed the documents for its initial public offering. And suddenly Wall Street could see the numbers. The company wasn't being judged by private investors anymore. It was being judged by the public market. And investors didn't like what they saw. The prospectus revealed enormous losses. It revealed unusual financial metrics. And it exposed governance issues that raised serious questions about Neumann's control over the company. Suddenly, the story wasn't about changing the world. It was about whether the business could actually make money. The $47 billion valuation began to look impossible. Within weeks, the company's expected valuation reportedly plunged toward roughly $10 billion. And the IPO was delayed. Then Adam Neumann stepped down as CEO. The man who had been treated as essential to WeWork's success had suddenly become part of the problem. But there was one investor who had already gone too far to simply walk away. Masayoshi Son's SoftBank had poured billions into WeWork. Son had helped transform the company from a rapidly growing startup into a $47 billion private market giant. Now he had to rescue it. SoftBank took greater control, while Neumann negotiated a massive exit package that included cash, stock, and other financial arrangements. Then just months later, the world changed. COVID-19 sent millions of employees home. Offices emptied. Demand for traditional office space collapsed. And suddenly, WeWork's fundamental weakness became impossible to hide. It was carrying enormous long-term lease obligations while customers were demanding flexibility, exactly the opposite of what its cost structure required. Eventually, WeWork found another path to the stock market. In 2021, it went public through a SPAC merger at a valuation of roughly $9 billion. But that was a fraction of its $47 billion peak. And the public market had already delivered its verdict. The dream had been repriced. The company continued fighting to survive. But losses persisted. By 2022, WeWork lost roughly $2.3 billion. And in 2023, management warned investors that there was substantial doubt about the company's ability to continue operating. The stock collapsed. The once glamorous startup was now fighting for its life. On November 6, 2023, WeWork filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The company listed more than $18 billion in debt and around $15 billion in assets. A company once valued at $47 billion had reached the end of its original journey. So was WeWork a scam? Not exactly. The underlying product was real. Customers really did want flexible offices. And WeWork genuinely changed the way companies thought about workspace. The real failure was financial. The company confused growth with strength. It confused a powerful brand with a powerful business model. And most importantly, it confused a private valuation with reality. The first lesson is simple. A valuation is not the same thing as value. A private company can be assigned a gigantic number because investors believe its future will be enormous. But eventually, someone has to test that belief. For WeWork, that test was the public market. And when investors could finally examine the economics closely, the $47 billion story fell apart. The second lesson is even more important. Technology can scale with software. Real estate cannot. A software company can add another million users without leasing another million square feet. WeWork couldn't. Every new location required buildings, renovations, employees, maintenance, and long-term commitments. The company tried to build a technology-style growth story on top of a capital-intensive real estate business. And eventually, the economics caught up with the narrative. And then there's governance. A charismatic founder can be an incredible asset. But when too much power becomes concentrated in one person, the company can lose its ability to challenge that person's decisions. WeWork's IPO exposed exactly why investors care about boards, conflicts of interest, executive compensation, and financial transparency. Because when everyone is drinking the same Kool-Aid, someone needs to be willing to ask whether the Kool-Aid is actually poison. WeWork didn't disappear because co-working was a bad idea. It collapsed because the financial structure underneath the idea couldn't support the story investors were being sold. The company wanted to behave like a technology platform, but it was still tied to the physical world. Buildings don't care about hype. Landlords don't accept visionary slogans as rent. And debt doesn't disappear just because a company's valuation goes up. WeWork's story is ultimately a warning about what happens when capital becomes too cheap, growth becomes the only goal, and investors fall in love with a narrative before understanding the economics. At its peak, WeWork was worth $47 billion. By the time it entered bankruptcy, that number belonged to another universe. The offices were real. The customers were real. The buildings were real. But the valuation was a belief. And perhaps that's the biggest lesson of WeWork. When the story becomes more valuable than the business, eventually reality sends the bill.